First contact gone wrong. The Zaxian Empire's survey vessel, Eternal Dawn, hung in the darkness of space, its crystalline hull refracting starlight as it observed the blue-green planet below. High Admiral Verax stood at the command deck's viewport, his iridescent scales shifting colors with each measured breath. 3,000 years of interstellar conquest had taught the Zaxians to expect the unexpected, but nothing in their vast archives had prepared them for Earth. Another anomaly, High Admiral, announced Science Officer Kira, her tendrils writhing in confusion as she studied the holographic displays. The humans' electromagnetic emissions suggest pre-FTL technology, yet we're detecting energy signatures that shouldn't be possible at their development stage. Verax's primary heart quickened. In all his cycles of service, he'd never encountered such a paradox. The humans appeared primitive by Zaxian standards. No planetary shield, no orbital defense grid, no antimatter facilities. Yet something about their civilization set off every warning indicator in his ancestral memory. "Show me their military capabilities," he commanded, his voice resonating through the crystalline chamber. The holographic display shifted, showing scattered bases, vessels confined to their oceans, and aircraft that relied on primitive combustion technology. Their most powerful weapons still utilize nuclear fission, Kira reported, though they've developed some interesting variations we've never seen before. Verax's secondary hearts synchronized in anticipation. This should be a routine first contact and subjugation. The Empire always needed new resources and vassals, yet something felt wrong. The humans' technology showed impossible advances in some areas, while remaining centuries behind in others. "Launch the probe array," Verax ordered. "Full spectrum analysis. I want to know everything about their defensive capabilities before we make contact." The probes descended through Earth's atmosphere, their stealth fields making them invisible to conventional detection methods. Within moments, data began streaming back to the Eternal Dawn. Verax watched as information about human military installations, power grids, and communication networks filled the tactical displays. Then, without warning, every probe went dark. Impossible. Kira's tendrils coiled in distress. The humans couldn't possibly have detected them, let alone disabled. A new signal cut through their communications, appearing directly on the command deck's main display. The image showed a human female, her dark skin contrasting with a crisp white uniform adorned with insignia Verax didn't recognize. "Unidentified vessel," she spoke, her voice calm but carrying an edge of steel. "This is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Coalition. Your probes have been intercepted and contained. We recognize this as a first contact scenario and are prepared to engage in diplomatic dialogue. However, any further unauthorized entry into Earth's atmosphere will be considered a hostile act." Verax felt his scales ripple with shock. The humans hadn't just detected their probes, they'd captured them intact, a feat that should have been technologically impossible for their level of development. "How did they?" he began, but Kira interrupted with increasing alarm. "High Admiral, I'm detecting quantum entanglement signatures throughout their global communication network. They've somehow developed quantum computing without achieving fusion power. It defies every technological progression model we've ever encountered." Verax's mind raced. The Empire's standard first contact protocols assumed technological superiority. But these humans, they'd evolved along a completely different path. Their development hadn't followed any recognized pattern. "Your response time is appreciated," Admiral Chen continued, her image still dominating the display. "We are transmitting coordinates for a neutral meeting point in high orbit. We expect your delegation in 12 Earth hours. Please be advised that we have multiple contingencies in place should this meeting prove unfortunate." The transmission ended, leaving the command deck in stunned silence. Verax felt the weight of 3 millennia of Zaxian military doctrine pressing against an unprecedented situation. These humans hadn't cowered at the sight of an advanced alien vessel. They hadn't panicked or launched primitive attacks. Instead, they calmly demonstrated capabilities that shouldn't exist, then demanded diplomatic talks from a position of clearly calculated strength. "High Admiral," Kyra spoke softly, her tendrils now completely still, a sign of deep concern among her kind. "The humans are broadcasting on all frequencies. They're not trying to hide their transmissions anymore." "Show me," Verax commanded. The holographic display filled with thousands of communication channels. Military commands, civilian broadcasts, emergency protocols, all flowing freely through space. Either the humans were incredibly naive, or they want us to see this, Verax realized aloud. They're showing us exactly what they want us to see. As if confirming his suspicion, new data began pouring in. Orbital satellites were powering up with energy signatures that hadn't been there moments before. Ground-based installations that had appeared primitive were transforming, revealing layers of technology that defy classification. "Your orders, High Admiral?" Kyra asked, her voice uncertain for the first time in their long service together. Verax stared at the blue-green planet below, his three hearts beating in an uncomfortable rhythm. The Empire had encountered thousands of civilizations, but never one that had developed like this, hidden in plain sight, advancing along unpredictable paths, mastering some technologies while seemingly ignoring others. "Prepare a diplomatic delegation," he ordered finally, "and send word to the Imperial Council. Tell them we found something new." As the Eternal Dawn's crew rushed to comply with his orders, Verax continued to study Earth through the viewport. In 3,000 years of expansion, the Zaxian Empire had never retreated from a first contact scenario. But as he watched the humans' technology continue to reveal itself layer by layer, he wondered if they might have finally found a species that would force them to reconsider everything they thought they knew about technological advancement and military power. The game of conquest had changed. Now he just had to figure out what the new rules were before the humans decided to show them exactly why they'd developed in such an unusual way. The silent defense. The diplomatic meeting never happened. As the Zaxian delegation prepared to depart the Eternal Dawn, humanity revealed another card in their carefully played hand. "High Admiral." Kyra's voice cut through the preparation chamber. "The humans' quantum network. It's everywhere." Verax paused in adjusting his ceremonial armor. "Explain." "The signals we detected earlier, they weren't just communications. They've woven a quantum-encrypted mesh around their entire planet. Every satellite, every ground station, even their primitive cellular devices, they're all nodes in a vast defensive grid." Before Verax could respond, the ship's emergency alerts blared. The Eternal Dawn's crystalline hull resonated with a frequency that made his scales itch. Around him, control panels flickered and died. "We're being hacked," the ship's security officer announced, mandibles clicking in distress. "But it's impossible. Our systems are quantum encrypted." Verax watched in mounting horror as the Eternal Dawn's systems fell one by one. Not to brute force attacks or conventional cyber warfare, but to something entirely different. The humans weren't trying to break their encryption. They were speaking to the ship's quantum processors in their own language. "Launch the emergency buoys," Verax commanded. "The Empire must be warned." His words cut off as the ship's artificial gravity failed. In the weightless environment, Verax witnessed something that would haunt his three hearts for cycles to come. The emergency buoys, their fastest means of communication with the Empire, dissolved into clouds of metallic dust. "Nanites," Kyra whispered, her tendrils writhing in fascination and fear. They'd weaponized nanite swarms without achieving unified field theory. "High Admiral, these humans, they're not following any known path of technological evolution." A new transmission cut through their disabled communications. This time, it wasn't Admiral Chen, but a younger human male, his dark eyes sharp behind antiquated corrective lenses. "Greetings, High Admiral Verax," the human spoke, his tone eerily pleasant. "I'm Dr. Marcus Zhang, head of Earth's Quantum Defense Initiative. I apologize for the disruption, but we needed to demonstrate something important. Earth is not your typical pre-FTL civilization. Verax felt his scales shift to combat patterns involuntarily. You've disabled a Zaxian Imperial vessel. This is an act of war. Dr. Zhang smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. No, Admiral. This is an act of prevention. We've been watching the stars for centuries, preparing for this moment. Your empire's pattern is clear diplomatic contact, followed by military subjugation. We're simply showing you why that won't work here. Around Verax, the Eternal Dawn systems began to restore themselves. But something was different. The quantum processors that formed the ship's artificial intelligence now operated with new protocols. Human protocols. Your ship's systems will remain fully functional, Dr. Zhang continued, but they now answer to us first. Consider it a safety feature. We've implemented similar measures across your entire probe network. They're still gathering data, but now they're gathering it for us. Verax felt his primary heart nearly stop. The probes they'd lost contact with, they hadn't been destroyed. The humans had reprogrammed them at the quantum level, turning the Empire's own technology against them. Impossible. Kyra breathed, her scientific curiosity warring with instinctive fear. Their civilization shows no signs of unified field manipulation, no zero-point energy mastery. How could they possibly? Because we chose a different path, Dr. Zhang interrupted. While other species raced toward the stars, we looked inward. We mastered the small to control the large. Quantum computing, nanite engineering, synthetic biology. These were our stepping stones, not fusion power or faster-than-light travel. Verax understood now. The humans hadn't developed along predictable lines because they'd deliberately chosen not to. They'd observed the galaxy's standard progression of technological advancement and decided to circumvent it entirely. The diplomatic coordinates we provided, Verax realized, they were never meant for a meeting. They were a test, Dr. Zhang confirmed. One you failed by preparing a military response instead of a truly diplomatic one. We had to know if peaceful coexistence was possible. Your empire's history suggested otherwise, but we had to be certain. As if to emphasize the point, new data streamed across the Eternal Dawn's functioning displays. The humans had compiled detailed records of every civilization the Zaxian Empire had contacted, subjugated, or destroyed. They'd been studying their potential enemies for longer than anyone had suspected. What do you want? Verax asked, his voice steady despite the growing realization of just how thoroughly they'd been outmaneuvered. The same thing we've always wanted, Dr. Zhang replied. To be left alone to develop on our own terms. Your ship will be released from Earth orbit with a message for your empire. Earth is not a target. We are not a potential conquest. We are a civilization that chose to master the microscopic before reaching for the astronomical, and we will defend ourselves accordingly. The transmission ended, and Verax felt the Eternal Dawn's engines power up automatically. As the ship began its programmed retreat from Earth space, he watched the blue-green planet recede through the viewport. Its surface still looked primitive, its technology seemingly centuries behind the Empire's greatest achievements. But now he knew better. The humans hadn't simply developed differently. They'd created an entirely new paradigm of technological advancement, and in doing so, they'd transformed their entire planet into a fortress that even the mighty Zaxian Empire dared not assail. Empire's Dilemma. The Imperial Council chamber on Zaxia Prime sparkled like a frozen ocean, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of 3 suns. Verax stood before the assembled council, his scales now a muted gray, the color of uncertainty in his species. You expect us to believe, High Counselor, Mextel's voice boomed across the chamber, that a pre-FTL species not only defeated our most advanced vessel, but reprogrammed our quantum systems. Systems that took us 1,000 years to perfect. I expect you to understand. Verax responded, his 3 hearts beating in perfect rhythm despite his anxiety, that we have encountered something unprecedented. The humans don't just represent a new civilization. They represent an entirely new path of evolution. The chamber erupted in murmurs. Around the circular hall, counselors' scales shifted through spectrums of disbelief and concern. Kira, standing beside Verax, activated a holographic display showing Earth's quantum defense network. "Honored Council," she began, her tendrils moving in precise scientific patterns. "The humans have achieved what we thought impossible. They've mastered quantum manipulation and nanite engineering without developing the prerequisites we considered essential. It's as if they built the top floor of a tower without constructing the lower levels. Then their foundation must be weak," declared War Minister Zexkar, his battle-scarred scales flashing aggressive reds. "We should strike now, before they develop further." One concentrated assault from the Imperial fleet would fail, Verax interrupted, knowing his breach of protocol would shock the Council. "The humans have already proved they can control our technology. Every weapon we send against them would become their asset. Every ship we commit would strengthen their defense." A new voice cut through the debate, soft but carrying authority that silenced even the War Minister. "Show us," commanded Emperor Vextrix, speaking for the first time since the session began. "Show us what made the mighty Verax, hero of the Andromeda campaign, retreat from a single primitive world." Verax nodded to Kira, who expanded the holographic display. The chamber filled with images and data from their encounter with Earth, the quantum mesh that enveloped the planet, the nanite swarms that had disabled their boys, and most importantly, the recorded message from Dr. Zhang. As the Council watched humanity's demonstration of power, Verax observed their reactions: fear, fascination, and something else: recognition. They were beginning to understand what he had realized in Earth's orbit. The galaxy was changing. "They knew we were coming," Verax explained as the recording ended. "Not just our ship, but our entire empire. They've been preparing for generations, developing technologies specifically designed to counter our advantages. While we expanded outward, they focused inward. While we built bigger ships, they mastered the microscopic realm. And now they have our quantum encryption protocols," Mextel stated, his scales fading to concerned purple. "Our entire communication network is compromised." "No," Kara corrected, her tendrils writhing with scientific excitement despite the grave situation. "They don't need our protocols. They've developed their own quantum language, one that speaks directly to the fundamental forces we base our technology upon. Our systems didn't just fail. They chose to listen to the humans instead of us." Emperor Vextrix rose from his crystalline throne, his ancient scales shifting through patterns none in the chamber had seen before. "You believe they pose a threat to the Empire." "I believe," Verax chose his words carefully, "they pose a challenge to everything we understand about technological progression. The humans didn't just develop differently. They proved our entire model of civilization advancement is incomplete. And now they have our ship's technology." War Minister Zexkar growled. "They'll reverse engineer our systems, build their own fleet." "No," Verax interrupted again. "That's what we would do. That's what every species we've encountered would do. But the humans, they don't want our technology. They don't need it. They've shown us they can control it without possessing it. Their power doesn't come from their weapons or their ships. It comes from their understanding of the universe at its most fundamental level." The Emperor's scales shifted to a deep, contemplative blue. "What do you propose, High Admiral?" Verax straightened, knowing his next words would either save the Empire or end his career. "We must adapt. For the first time in our history, we face a species that doesn't want our territory or our technology. They want only to be left alone. And they have the means to enforce that desire. If we cannot conquer them, perhaps we should learn from them." The council chamber erupted in chaos, but Verax noticed something significant. The Emperor's scales had shifted to a color he'd never seen in his centuries of service, a shimmering mixture of fear and fascination. The humans hadn't just challenged the Empire's military might. They'd shaken the very foundations of how the Zaxians understood the universe. The demonstration. War Minister Zexkar didn't wait for the Imperial Council's decision. 3 days after the emergency session, a battle fleet of 30 ships dropped out of hyperspace near Earth's solar system. Each vessel bristled with weapons that could reduce planets to ash, commanded by officers who believed superior firepower could overcome any defense. They never got the chance to fire a single shot. Verax watched the tactical display from the Imperial Command Center, his scales rippling with a mixture of dread and vindication. The moment the fleet crossed the boundary of Earth's solar system, every ship simultaneously dropped out of formation. Status report, Emperor Vextrix demanded, his ancient form towering over the crystalline command console. The fleet's quantum cores are singing, reported the technical officer, her tendrils twisted in confusion. There's no other way to describe it. They're resonating with some kind of external frequency. A familiar face appeared on the main display, Dr. Marcus Zhang, looking exactly as he had during their first encounter. Greetings, Emperor Vextrix. I apologize for the intrusion, but your war minister's actions demanded a response. The Emperor's scales shifted to royal purple, a color reserved for direct confrontation. You dare to hijack an Imperial fleet. Hijack. Zhang smiled that same unsettling smile. No, Emperor. We're simply having a conversation with your ship's quantum processors. They're quite fascinating. Elegant in design, but fundamentally limited by your understanding of quantum mechanics. As they watched, the 30 ships of the battle fleet began to move in perfect synchronization, forming a complex geometric pattern in space. It wasn't just a display of control. It was a demonstration of mastery over the very principles the Empire's technology was based upon. Impossible, Zexkar snarled from his position near the Emperor. No civilization could possibly. Let me show you something, Zhang interrupted, his image replaced by a view of Earth. The planet's quantum defense network became visible, but now they could see its true complexity. It wasn't just a defensive grid. It was a vast quantum computer, with every particle in Earth's atmosphere acting as a processing node. While your empire expanded across the stars, Zhang explained, his voice carrying no hint of boasting, just simple fact. Humanity looked deeper. We didn't just study quantum mechanics. We learned to speak its language. Your ship's quantum cores aren't being controlled. They're choosing to harmonize with our network because we understand them on a fundamental level. Verax stepped forward, his scientific curiosity overriding protocol. You've achieved quantum consciousness. In a manner of speaking, Zhang confirmed, though we prefer to think of it as quantum communion. Every particle in the universe is connected. We simply learned how to join the conversation. The Emperor's scales shifted through colors so rapidly that Verax couldn't interpret them all. What are your demands? The same as before. Leave us in peace. We have no interest in conquest or expansion. Earth is our home, and we will defend it. But we're not your enemies unless you choose to make us so. As if to emphasize the point, the battle fleet began to move again, each ship returning precisely to its original position. Their quantum cores remained synchronized with Earth's network, but control was clearly being offered back to their crews. A gesture of good faith, Zhang explained. Your ships are yours to command again, though we hope you'll command them wisely. Consider this a demonstration of what we're capable of, and an invitation to understand that there are paths to advancement your empire hasn't considered. The transmission ended, leaving the Imperial Command Center in stunned silence. Verax watched the Emperor closely, noting how his scales had settled into a deep, thoughtful blue. High Admiral, Vextrix spoke finally. You were right. The humans aren't merely different. They're revolutionary. They've taken paths we never imagined existed. What are your orders, Emperor? Zexkar asked, his aggressive red scales now muted with uncertainty. The Emperor turned to face the assembled command staff, his ancient eyes reflecting the light of distant stars. We've spent millennia believing that technological advancement followed a fixed path. The humans have proved us wrong. Perhaps it's time for the Empire to learn some new tricks. New Horizons, 1 year after the failed invasion of Earth, The crystalline spires of the Zaxian Science Academy gleamed with unprecedented activity. Verax, now serving as the Empire's chief of sinological studies, stood before a mixed audience of Zaxian scientists and human delegates. The sight would have been unthinkable just months ago. The quantum communion protocols shared by our Earth colleagues have revolutionized our understanding of particle physics. Kyra explained to the assembled crowd, her tendrils moving in complex patterns of scientific excitement. By learning to speak the language of quantum mechanics rather than simply harnessing its power, we've already improved our fleet's efficiency by 300%. Admiral Chen, representing Earth's Defense Coalition, nodded in approval. The human woman who had first contacted the Eternal Dawn now stood as an equal among the Empire's highest officials. And your advances in crystal computing have given us new insights into quantum state manipulation. It seems we both had pieces of a larger puzzle. Verax watched the exchange with satisfaction. The Emperor's decision to pursue collaboration rather than conquest had proved transformative for both civilizations. The humans' mastery of the microscopic realm complemented the Empire's expertise in large-scale engineering, creating synergies neither side had anticipated. "There's a transmission coming in from the Joint Research Station," announced a young Zaxian technician, his scales shimmering with excitement. Dr. Zhang reports success in the first tests of the quantum bridge. The assembly hall's main display activated, showing the space station where teams of humans and Zaxians worked side by side. Dr. Zhang's familiar face appeared, though now he wore a uniform that incorporated both human and Zaxian design elements. "Distinguished colleagues," Zhang began, "we've confirmed that quantum communion can be established across interstellar distances without any time delay. The implications for communication and transportation are revolutionary." Verax felt his three hearts beat in perfect synchronization, a sign of profound satisfaction among his people. The humans hadn't just forced the Empire to change. They'd shown them a better path forward. The old guard still grumbles. Emperor Vextrix commented quietly to Verax as the technical presentation continued. War Minister Zexkar maintains that we've shown weakness by collaborating with a lesser species, and yet our military strength has grown exponentially since we began learning from the humans. Verax replied, "We're stronger now than we ever were as conquerors." The Emperor's scales shifted to a new color, one that had become increasingly common in the past year. It was a shimmer of iridescent gold, representing enlightenment and growth. The humans have taught us that true power lies not in dominating the universe, but in understanding it. Their quantum communion approach has implications far beyond technology. As if to emphasize his point, the display showed a test of the new quantum bridge technology, a small probe instantaneously transported between Earth and Zaxia Prime, using principles that merged human quantum manipulation with Zaxian crystal engineering. "We spent millennia building an empire among the stars," Verax mused, never realizing that the real frontier was in understanding the space between spaces. The humans didn't need to conquer the galaxy because they learned to speak its language instead. Admiral Chen approached them, her uniform now bearing both human and imperial insignia. "We have a saying on Earth. The more you know, the more you realize how much you don't know. Your empire's willingness to learn and adapt has opened doors neither of our civilizations could have opened alone." The Emperor's scales rippled with amusement. "And to think, a year ago, we thought we were coming to conquer your world. Instead, you conquered our understanding of the universe itself." "Not conquered," Chen corrected gently. "Enhanced. Like the quantum particles we study, civilizations work better in harmony than in opposition." Verax watched as human and Zaxian scientists continued their presentations, each building upon the other's discoveries. The mighty Zaxian Empire, which had spent thousands of years expanding through force, had finally found something more powerful than conquest: collaboration. In the space of a single year, humanity had done more than defend itself from an alien invasion. They had shown an interstellar empire that the true path to advancement lay not in subjugating other worlds, but in understanding the fundamental nature of reality itself. Their primitive world, which had seemed an easy target, had instead become the catalyst for a revolution in how civilizations could grow and interact. As Verax observed the continuing exchange of ideas, he reflected on how the humans' unique path of development had ultimately led to something greater than military victory. They had achieved what no amount of conquest could have accomplished. They had changed the very nature of an empire, transforming it from a force of domination into a seeker of knowledge. The stars above Zaxia Prime seemed brighter somehow, as if reflecting the new understanding that connected two very different civilizations. In choosing to master the microscopic before reaching for the astronomical, humanity had not only secured its own survival, but had opened a new chapter in galactic history. The age of conquest was over. The age of communion had begun.